Okay, hi everyone. So on this podcast episode, I'm happy to bring on John Burgoon. He's the medical sales manager at Mativ. And if you are interested in wound therapy, this is the podcast for you. We go into the different layers in a wound therapy construction. We talk about the considerations on developing a specification, pathways on how to get your specification into some proof of concept prototypes, then into scalable production with a converter partner like Tapecon, and future customization options. These are different options that John talks about that's kind of coming, and some new capital expenditure on the Mativ side that's going to enable more options for wound therapy solutions of the future. So looking forward to this podcast. For those interested in wound therapy, I bring you John Burgoon from Mativ. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Better Product Solutions podcast. And happy to have another guest here, John Burgoon. And this is a fun podcast because I'm excited to talk wound therapy because we haven't done this, as I was just telling you, John. So John's official title for Mativ, his medical sales manager at Mativ. So John, welcome to physical Tapecon, because a lot of times, like I said, most of these are done on Teams. So
Yeah.
the fact that you're sitting here is awesome. I think we've only done a few of these, and thanks for coming in on the plane and looking to showing you around our facility while you're here. And we're working the podcast in. So thanks, John. And so tell us about yourself. This is the softball intro. Tell us about your role at Mativ and I guess the company.
Yeah. Well, first off, thanks for having me. That's great. Flight was very easy. Beautiful city. First time in Buffalo. So like it so far. So a little background on me. I've been working in the medical industry in different areas from oral care to drug delivery, medical device, and now wound therapy for the last probably 10, 11 years. Um, Came on to Mativ this last year. And if you don't know much about Mativ, it's a merger of Legacy SWM and Legacy Nina Paper Company. Came together about a year ago, was actually just the anniversary, about a month ago. So it's been a full year. And now Mativ is the global brand moving forward. And so we have about 7,000 employees globally, manufacturing capabilities in nearly every part of the world. And so it's very, very exciting time to be at Mativ. And as you said, I work with the medical wound therapy primarily components for North America and manage that portfolio.
Yep. And of course, I was just up at your place, so it's
Yep.
nice. It's nice to do the home at home.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk a lot about advanced wound therapy solutions. So the no, we haven't even broached this topic on the podcast yet. So I think a lot of people think of, a bandage, as just this kind of esoteric thing that is like one material or two materials, and they obviously don't really understand what really goes into and all kind of the material science behind it. So I'll say the wound therapy 101 question is, can you talk about all the different layers of a wound therapy application? Like what really is the wound therapy construction?
Yeah. Right.
At a high level?
Yeah.
We can decide how deep.
Yeah. No one ever thinks about that. From a little kid, even it's like, ooh, I got an owie, and then you bring the bandage in and throw it on there, but you never really think about what's going into it. And there's really four key layers, right? So you have an adhesive, which keeps everything together, anchored to the skin. You need to absorb, get some of the drainage out of the wound, and that's where the non-woven part comes in. And you need a backing layer, something to kind of hold it all together, the thing that you see of the outer layer. And that's our TPU line. And then what I think is one of the coolest pieces of technology is the Delnet layer. And the Delnet layer is actually bonded to the non-woven, and that's the skin contact layer. And that allows the wound to drain properly without adhering directly to the non-woven. So without the Delnet, if you were to peel off a bandage during the healing process, it's likely that you would just rip the, whatever progress has been made right off, and now you're starting from scratch. And so it really acts as that protective layer, um, to the wound and the bandage. So that's a very simplified version of what all goes into it. And there's many different combinations and different types of applications, um, within that construction.
And I think that was my biggest education was the Delnet layer. It's
Yeah.
like you think it's just, the gauze that's going to soak up the wound and then something will protect it, but it's kind of an unsung hero, kind of take it for granted type technology, right?
Yeah.
And just to take a step back, you said TPU. If you could define that, because some people might be like, well, what's TPU?
Yeah, so essentially a polyurethane. So it's very stretchy, breathable, yet water resistant film, essentially. Um, and we have capabilities of being able to make that, from like a very thin caliper, like a 0.25, all the way up to a 25, mils and greater. So there's a huge range, and obviously the thicker you go, the different types of applications, like, teeth aligners and things like that. But kind of that sweet spot for wound therapy would be around 1 mil to 4 mils.
Right.
Right, depending on what the end application is for, and obviously well, not obviously, but the lower the caliper, the higher the MVTR and the stretchier it will be. So we can customize within just a section of like the TPUs, for example. If you need it to be more breathable, there's things we can do to achieve that. If you need it to be stretchier, for let's say you're on a like going over an elbow, or over your finger, other areas and joints that are moving a lot, that flexibility, is very important.
Yep. I was going to also ask you to define MVTR just for the audience.
Yeah, more moisture, transmission rate. Essentially, it's a way to measure a film, on its breathability.
Mhm. And so there's a lot of variables, factors, and that's what I was going to ask you, I guess the different ranges of application. So, there's different, you guys make all different types of Delnet configurations,
Yep.
different type of the TPU configurations, different types of the, um, what's the absorbent layer?
The non-woven.
The non-woven
Yeah.
layer.
Yeah.
So I guess, can you talk a little bit more about maybe just within the range, like what are some of the considerations that someone would have as they specify? But it's pretty much just you have these material options, and it's really you can construct whatever you want based on all these different variables.
Yeah, it really comes down to what you're trying to achieve, right? If it's strictly absorbency, um, we have a material, called, substrate, a lyocell, right? It's a fiber, for that goes into a nonwoven, right? It's a lyocell based fiber, which has a higher absorbency than, let's say, a PET based fiber, for a nonwoven. Um, and the thicker you get that pad, obviously, the more absorbent it's going to be. And so if you're trying to achieve the most absorbency possible, you would want that thicker pad with a lyocell, right? If it's something more like a finger bandage, right? Um, the lyocell may be important, but you may have already taken a not adherent pad, for example. That's just it's a pad essentially with the non-woven and the Delnet that you would place to get as much drainage off as much as possible. And maybe you're running your wound under cold water, for example, because you're trying to kind of stop the bleeding before you put the finger bandage on.
Yep.
For example, you may not need a thicker pad for something like that. A thinner PET might be what works for that particular application.
Yep.
And so there's a lot of different combinations that you could come up with just from the non-woven, aspect of it alone. And we do have like, PET and lyocell blends of non-wovens too, which are kind of that middle road.
Yep.
And when you bring the Delnet into it, we we have different boss counts, and so essentially what that means is the little holes that's in the netting,
Yeah.
So let's say we have some where it's like you'll have 15 holes every square inch. We could have up to 40 holes every square inch, or we can even reduce that more. And so there's ways that you can control um, the uptake a little bit more, just even with the Delnet layer.
Yeah, and if I guess I'm just going to take what you're saying and put it
Yeah,
in the perspective of a design team that's
right.
saying, hey, we're going to embark on a project, form a company, start a new product line, whatever, that involves a nonwoven or a wound care application. It's like the design specification, they need to know what their use case is. I mean,
Yep.
is it going to be a situation where there's, a lot of blood, a little bit of blood, or whatever that
Hmm.
is? If they had a good specification of, I'll say, what the design specification of what that product needs to do in the end use environment, from there, someone like, obviously you would help select the components to help
Hmm.
fulfill that design specification. And then, of course, the Tapecon conversion process comes into play because
Hmm.
we'd be able to, once that material set is selected, then when it gets to prototyping it or putting it into the actual end use construction, that's where Tapecon comes in,
Yeah.
sources those materials from Mativ, and on we go into proof of concept type prototypes that can then be tested and say, hey, is this working the way it is? And if not, your spec sheets have all the detailed information for someone to geek out on all the different variables to try some other configurations. That sound about right?
Yeah, that's certainly right. And on the front end, when we're working with a design house or an end user, they're really working on, what problem are we solving?
Yeah.
They're going to be the marketers. They're going to be the force bringing that to the market. A lot of times they don't have the capabilities to bring it to light or to life like Tapecon can.
Mhm.
Um, and many times, and I hope we would do this in the future as well, when we work as a team, it's the three companies coming together because uh, with our technology too, different tensile elongation and all those things come into play on the converting side of things too. So things to consider. And we can customize. And that's one thing that I really value with this company is our ability to customize and willingness to customize for a customer for their particular application. So if we need to run a Delnet a particular way, we're willing to take those things on all the way to the TPU of you need a different color, you need a different caliper. Let's look at it.
So if all these considerations,
Yeah.
waterproof, sustainability, absorbency, antimicrobial.
Yes.
I'm just trying. Are
Yeah.
there any other variables we haven't talked about? And then my next
Yeah.
question was going to be, obviously, if someone wanted to get some sample material and just get a quick sample before they kind of select how what's the best way to work on getting, I guess, those early stage samples. Obviously, we could laser cut some samples, so we could talk about which ones are kind of laser cuttable without having to invest in all the
Yeah.
tooling costs if we were going to do something at a higher volume.
Yeah, so if it's something a little bit straightforward, out of the books that we have, we'll send hand samples. We can cut off from our master rolls and send, and really work with you on that. If it's something that we're customizing and kind of taking it, um, a lot of times we'll base the customization off of an existing, right? So like it's like, yeah, this almost worked, but can
Right.
you do this? We may tie in at the end of a commercial run and just do a smaller run and see if we can hit those specs,
Right.
right? And we're willing to do these small trials.
Yeah.
So the small trial runs I think is very beneficial when you're trying to hit a particular spec or a goal for that end application.
On the construction, is there anything else I'm missing here when I look at kind of these different? We talked about the Delnet, the composite media. The outside layer, I think, is interesting too, because you're right, there's different colors, but then I'm also noticing like the different
Yeah,
size, like weave, right? Can you
yeah,
maybe talk about, why someone would want something that's got that like almost like there's,
yeah. So those,
fishing line in there
yeah.
or
So
something?
those particular that actually is an extrusion of the TPU with Delnet in it.
So
It
combined.
makes it a little bit more durable. right? If it takes the stretch out of it, so uh, it would be like, I've seen it on much smaller type of applications, like smaller bandages and things where you need it to be very durable, not stretch, stay in place.
Mhm.
Um, and also like with the blue, those colors a lot of times in the food packaging plants, lot of them have requirements that you have to wear blue, have blue wound care things on your
Hmm.
body, because if it was to fall off, it's easy to identify it
Hmm.
in the process. So everything that goes into these products usually has some kind of reason as to why to satisfy the end application.
Yep. Yeah. On the I know there's just so many more options than I initially thought there were. I
Yeah.
mean, if you look at all the combinations that could be created, you can create quite a few different bandage wound care applications. On the sustainability, anything you want to mention there? I mean, obviously, I'm seeing this lyocell. I had written down 100% plant-based fiber, which is interesting.
Yep.
If that's kind of a driver for someone who's trying to design something in, and then the antimicrobial, that's an interesting thing too in terms of the impact on healing process. Anything you want to
Yeah, it
mention there as how
helps
those
with the healing
features?
process. Yeah, so we take sustainability very seriously. Obviously that's a big push with everybody these days. And so we've actually found ways to be able to recycle. So some of the unused, or like what most people call scrap, or
Mm.
like from the starting or ending of the run scrap, actually be able to recycle and use that and bring it back into another run, and get the same results. So that's a big push, especially like in the TPUs that we do. The lyocell, that we're gonna start seeing more of that as well. It is comes with a higher price point, um, but the sustainability of it, that it's 100% recyclable,
Yep.
um, coming from plant fibers, based fibers.
Yep.
I think it's exciting to see, how much further we get in the future with with that as well.
Yeah, you don't generally think of recyclability when it comes to a wound care product.
No,
So just the fact that we're talking about it is pretty cool.
yeah.
So I think we've hit, someone who's trying to launch the product, all the different types of considerations. I have to imagine they've gotten an earful on that. Any other, I guess, emerging technologies at Mativ that you'd like to mention, or anything else that the company's kind of working on that's kind of gives a line of sight to future stuff?
Yeah, so couple of things. So first, I'll just briefly talk about, we have also foams and gels. Um, Not going to go into a deep dive onto those, but they could be its own podcast, honestly. Uh, but they're TPU based foams and gels, that are used for advanced wound care, wound therapy type applications, right? Um, and very, very cool technology. They It almost acts as a silicone, like it's all adhesive. It feels like adhesive base, but it's a TPU base, and it's almost like a silicone, and you can, like, put it on your body, take it off, replace it somewhere else. Super cool technology. Um, and then one thing I'm really excited about, with the TPUs, we are building a brand new line in our UK facility, a 100% medical dedicated line that's going to expand our capacity by 80%, which is going to allow for tons more innovation. We're going to be able to um, take all of those little one-off ideas and make them reality much faster too. So if you need a pink bandage or whatever, like we're going to be able to look at that seriously. Right now, we're kind of at a point where, you know we're running all the time and we're serving the markets. So by this time next year, we're going to be fully launched with that, and be ready to go.
Well, I'm excited to see the marketing materials that come out in terms of
Yeah, we're
how customizable or personalizable, could people, if people want to build more SKUs
yeah.
with more features. It sounds like what you're saying is in the future look for more types of
Mhm.
wound care options for the consumer public, right?
Oh, certainly. And in our Gilbert Ike location too, we have embossing capabilities, and like how can that mesh with it, right? And not even to mention the embossing capabilities we have in our Middletown location with the non-wovens too. So um, lots of potential and lots of customization. But at the end of the day, it's all about how do we best serve what you want and that you're trying to achieve for your end goal for the patient,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
And that's how it all comes back together.
Yeah. I mean, there's medical, and there's yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone's going to stop, you know, injuring themselves anytime soon. So it seems like a pretty
Yeah.
stable market. So that's good. When I think of the gels and the TPU, I just think of conformability and just comfort, right?
Oh,
I mean,
certainly.
just
Yeah.
that takes comfort to a whole new level.
Well, so think of like with the gels, like one example, when you buy new shoes, I'm a golfer, and when you buy a new pair of golf shoes and you walk 18 holes and you get those big blisters on the back of your heels, so you take the gel and it just fits perfectly right there. It conforms, will stay on the back of your heels all day, and it just relieves that. And it can either prevent it, act as a prevention tool,
Right.
or it could help with the wound healing process because the MVTR again is very high on those gels, so it helps with the breathability. Yet it sticks to the skin. So that's just like one example of something like how could it be used
Right.
potentially.
Yeah.
And
Right.
it's
So solutions looking for problems, and I
yep.
guess the
And those are
technology.
areas that they have little niches, but there's so much more to explore with those technologies.
Right. Cool. Well, I have to imagine whoever's listening hopefully is thinking, well, I just learned something about how to build a wound care product. That's all I had, John. So just like that, we flew through 20 minutes. I told you it'd go fast.
Yeah.
So is there anything, obviously, thanks again for coming. Is there
Yeah.
anything that you want to close with or any final thoughts that you want to impart on anybody before we kind of wrap it?
Yeah. So I just thanks again for this opportunity. I'm excited to see the plant and take a tour around
Yeah.
here, and um, it's been great. And hopefully, anyone listening out there, if you're working on something like this, like a wound therapy application or something that one of these products lines could go into, consider Mativ, and we certainly have a partner in Tapecon to be able to bring it to market for you.
Yeah. Well
So
said. All right. Thanks, John.
thanks a lot.
Okay.